Fatima was born into a Muslim family in Igbora, a quiet town in Oyo State. From a young age, she was full of curiosity, always exploring places others feared, asking questions no one else would dare, and dreaming about a world far beyond the walls of her small town. Her parents, simple and religious people, tried their best to instill discipline and faith in her, but Fatima's spirited nature always pushed her toward the unknown. By the time she was in primary school, Fatima was already recognized for her intelligence and liveliness. But her childhood wasn't as innocent as it should have been. While other children focused on exams and recess, Fatima found herself entangled in a situation she couldn't understand. She was only in primary 3 when she began to experience confusing behaviors from an older boy in school. Someone who should have known better. At the time, she didn't even fully grasp what was happening. There was no one she could turn to, no safe way to express her fears or confusion. Back home, life carried on as usual. Her parents never knew what she was going through, and she didn't know how to tell them. It wasn't until secondary school, when she experienced her first menstrual cycle, that her mother finally sat her down to explain the changes happening to her body. That conversation opened a floodgate of understanding. For the first time, Fatima began to see her past with clarity and pain. Despite her emotional turmoil, Fatima continued to thrive academically. She was a bright student, always at the top of her class. But beneath the surface, her heart carried invisible wounds. She smiled on the outside, laughed with her classmates, but carried a silent burden no one could see. In SS2, like many teenagers her age, she experienced her first real taste of affection. His name was Aziz, a university student who connected with her online. Their chats quickly grew into something more. To Fatima, it felt like love. He said all the right things, sent her songs, called her beautiful. It was thrilling, new and consuming. But soon, things started to shift. Aziz began to ask for things Fatima wasn't ready for. She was unsure, but afraid to lose him, so she gave in to pressures she didn't fully understand. She began to feel that maybe love always came with a price. Her innocence, once again, was chipped away in silence. Fatima's journey was just beginning, a road filled with twists, heartbreaks, and hard choices. But one thing remained constant: her resilience. Even when misunderstood, misjudged, or misled, there was a part of her that kept pushing forward. And in that stubborn hope, in her will to be loved, seen, and understood, Fatima's true story began to unfold. When Fatima entered the university, she thought she was leaving her past behind. She had chosen to study computer science at the University of Ilorin, partly because it was a good course, but mostly because it was close to Aziz, the boy who once made her feel loved, even if it came with confusion. By then, cracks had already started to appear in their relationship. Aziz had grown distant, unpredictable. His words weren't as warm, his presence not as steady. But Fatima, ever hopeful, believed she could fix it. If she loved hard enough, if she stayed patient, if she became everything he wanted. One day, Aziz casually mentioned he liked women who smoked. It wasn't something Fatima ever imagined for herself, but in a moment of weakness and a desperate need for his approval, she picked up the habit. She convinced herself it was just a phase, a harmless adjustment. But deep down, something inside her was breaking. During her very first weekend in Ilorin, she went to spend time with Aziz. What was meant to be a romantic visit turned into a nightmare. He treated her like an obligation, not a partner. He would leave her alone in his apartment, sometimes even with his friends, while he went off to parties. The warmth she once felt was replaced by loneliness and discomfort. And then one evening, when she least expected it, he crossed the line. Fatima didn't know how to process what had happened, how something that started with love could lead to so much pain. The relationship ended not long after. Aziz moved on without remorse, and Fatima was left to pick up the pieces. But she did what she always did. She endured. She buried herself in schoolwork, avoided questions, and convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, something better was ahead. Then came Femi. Unlike Aziz, Femi was kind, attentive, and emotionally open. He didn't come from wealth, and he wasn't flashy. But he listened. He showed her care, something she hadn't felt in a long time. They spent long nights talking, dreaming, laughing. For the first time, Fatima felt seen. Not as a body, not as an image, but as a person with value. Their relationship blossomed slowly. He told her he had never been with anyone before, and she was touched by his honesty. What they had felt pure, and Fatima gave him her heart. She even took on responsibilities, supporting him financially and playing the role of a homemaker whenever he was down. She didn't mind. All she wanted was love, the kind that didn't hurt. But love, as Fatima would learn again, doesn't always come with certainty. During a school break, Femi traveled home. His calls became irregular. He stopped picking at times. When they resumed school, he seemed distant. Fatima confronted him, worried, afraid. He finally opened up. His family was going through a crisis. His brother had been arrested, his mother was seriously ill. He didn't want to burden her with it, he said. Then came the final blow. He ended the relationship. He said he felt unworthy of her, that her family had more than his, and it made him feel small. No matter how she pleaded, no matter how she cried, he wouldn't change his mind. The heartbreak hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a loss of stability, of faith, of hope. Fatima sank into sadness, her academics suffered, and she began to feel like maybe she wasn't meant to be truly loved. But life had more twists in store. As the weight of her heartbreak with Femi settled in, Fatima struggled to breathe emotionally. Every call unanswered, every memory of the boy who once held her hands and spoke of forever haunted her. She tried to hide the pain behind forced smiles and borrowed distractions. But grief has a way of seeping into even the quietest corners. In the midst of this sadness, Akeem reappeared. A familiar face from her past, Akeem was charming, popular, and smooth with words. He ran a successful phone business, organized flashy campus events, and seemed to have everything going for him. At a time when Fatima felt lost and vulnerable, Akeem knew exactly what to say. He called her beautiful when she felt invisible. He offered to take her out on Valentine's Day, a simple dinner date that turned into a long night of shared laughter. But while Akeem wore the mask of a gentleman, he was no healer. That night, when he tried to cross physical boundaries she wasn't comfortable with, she pushed him away. He apologized, but something about the moment lingered in her heart, a quiet warning that maybe Akeem's affection had strings. Still, in her desperation to move on from Femi, Fatima allowed herself to drift into a relationship with him. It wasn't love, not like what she had with Femi, but it was a distraction. And distractions for someone whose heart was still bleeding could be mistaken for healing. At first, things were manageable. Akeem showered her with attention, posted her occasionally, and made her feel wanted. But it didn't last long. Soon he began to treat her like a visitor in his life. One day, he told her his mother was coming to visit and that she had to leave his apartment. Another time, he said a female family friend named Satemi would be staying with him, casually adding that the girl had a crush on him. Fatima's instincts screamed, but her heart whispered hope. She tried to believe him. She visited once and noticed strange signs. Satemi was using emergency contraceptives. There were uncomfortable touches exchanged between them, and Akeem's words didn't match his actions. When she confronted him, he dismissed her concerns and kissed her forehead like it was nothing. Things took a dramatic turn when Satemi reached out to Fatima directly, claiming to be Akeem's real girlfriend. Shocked, confused, and betrayed, Fatima initially held back. But when Akeem's second phone, which he had left with Satemi, exposed their chats, the truth unraveled. The two women, both hurt and tired of the lies, joined forces to confront him. Faced with evidence, Akeem finally confessed. He had called Fatima his side chick in front of others, even if he claimed he was joking. He apologized, saying he chose Fatima over Satemi and sent the other girl away. Fatima stayed. Maybe it was weakness, maybe it was love, or maybe she was just too tired to start over again. Her heart, bruised but still beating, craved stability, even if it came from someone who had once broken her trust. But deep within, Fatima knew. She was slowly losing pieces of herself, trying to hold on to people who weren't holding on to her. Even after everything, Fatima stayed with Akeem, not because she fully trusted him, but because a part of her still believed he could change. Or perhaps because she didn't trust that she'd ever find something better. She told herself it was love, but deep down, it felt more like survival. Surviving loneliness, rejection, and the fear of starting all over again. Meanwhile, Femi wasn't completely gone. he would still check up on her. Occasional calls, unexpected messages, video chats that lasted late into the night. It was complicated. The same boy who once left her heartbroken was now gently trying to re-enter her life. And despite all the pain he caused, Fatima couldn't deny the pull. To make things more confusing, Femi's friend, the one who had first introduced them, began showing interest in her too. But her heart wasn't in it. She couldn't picture herself with him. Her feelings, torn and confused, were still wrapped around two men, Akeem and Femi. Femi, now serving in NYSC, came to Ilorin one weekend and invited Fatima over. The comfort of his presence, the familiarity of his arms, everything felt warm again. One thing led to another, and they made love. It was tender, gentle, and unlike anything she shared with Akeem. In that moment, all the unresolved emotions resurfaced. The memories, the laughter, the love they once knew. But love rarely comes without consequences. Akeem found out. The revelation triggered a wave of chaos. He was furious, hurt, yet trying to hide it behind pride. He confronted her, and after an emotional confrontation, he shockingly forgave her. It was as if they were both caught in a toxic cycle of betrayal and reconciliation, unable to break free. Time passed, and Ramadan arrived. During the holy month, Fatima started talking to a new guy named Kudus. It began casually, just texts and light chats, until they finally met in person. The first time was simple, uneventful, but the second meeting didn't go the same way. Kudus invited her over, saying he was broke and couldn't take her out. She reluctantly agreed. Emotions ran high, and lines were crossed. Afterwards, guilt consumed her. She was still in a relationship with Akeem, or at least what was left of it. When Akeem found out, she tried to deny it. But he knew. He always had his ways, and eventually, she broke down and confessed. He ended the relationship, again. Fatima was devastated. The heartbreak this time was heavier. It wasn't just the loss of a relationship, it was the slow realization that maybe she was losing herself. Her emotions spiraled. She fell sick. Her body weakened. Doctors mentioned heart complications, triggered by emotional stress. Out of pity, or perhaps guilt, Akeem took her back. But the love was no longer pure. It was now filled with suspicions, secrets, and emotional bruises. Every day she questioned her place in his life. Every night she wondered if she was just one of many in his world. Still she stayed. Still she hoped. Fatima's heart was tired, but she couldn't walk away. Not yet. She told herself that maybe Akeem was finally ready to commit. After all, he took her back when she was sick. That had to mean something. But the truth was far messier than she allowed herself to admit. One afternoon, while scrolling through Akeem's second phone, Fatima noticed something odd. A name saved simply as iPhone 6 girl. The curiosity was too strong to ignore. As she opened the chat, her hands trembled. It was all there in black and white. Flirtations, late-night messages, suggestive emojis, and intimate voice notes. She confronted Akeem, expecting guilt, remorse, maybe even a fight. But instead, he deflected. You too. Haven't you done things? Didn't you run back to Femi? Didn't you meet up with Kudus? It wasn't an apology. It was a shield. A wall to protect his ego while stabbing her heart with blame. Fatima felt the sting, but she did what she always did. She forgave him. She told herself that love meant compromise, that real relationships go through storms. But the storm never ended. During the Salah holiday, Akeem introduced her to a child, a sweet, innocent boy barely 2 years old. With a calm face, Akeem said, "This is my son." Fatima was stunned. Her heart dropped. She remembered a photo from months ago. Akeem had shown her a picture where his older sister was holding a child. At the time, he casually said, "That's my son." She thought it was a joke, a passing comment. He never brought it up again. Now, the truth stared her in the face, and so did the betrayal. "You should have told me," she said, her voice barely steady. "I did," he replied. "He just didn't take me seriously." She was furious. Not because he had a child, but because he hid it behind half-truths and playful lies. The same way he'd done with Saitemi, the same way he did with every other girl. Still, Fatima stayed. She didn't know how to leave. Akeem had become her habit, painful, familiar, and hard to quit. And all the while, Femi lingered in the background. He would still call. He would still tell her he missed her. He would still say, if only things had gone differently. Fatima didn't know what to believe anymore. Akeem was wealthy, influential, and confident, but careless with her emotions. Femi was kind, nurturing, and emotionally present, but struggling to build a life. Akeem never talked about the future. He would make sarcastic jokes like, "Don't worry, we'll stop seeing each other soon," leaving Fatima in a constant state of insecurity. She started comparing them, not because she wanted to choose, but because she had no idea how to stop hurting. Akeem was physically more intense, but never cared about her pleasure. Femi, on the other hand, was gentle, attentive to every detail of her being. Akeem was judgmental and dismissive. Femi was patient and always willing to listen. But then she found out Femi had a new girlfriend. And just like that, another piece of her heart shattered. Fatima sat on the edge of the bed, staring into space. Femi had a girlfriend. The news hit her like a slap in the face. How could he, after all the calls, all the "I miss yous," all the promises, whispered under quiet night skies? She had been holding on to a thread, hoping maybe Femi was the answer after all, the one who truly saw her. But now even that thread felt like a lie. The pain clawed at her chest, tight and relentless. To make things worse, Akeem's phone never stopped ringing. One particular girl, Teslimat, had become a constant presence. Every time they were together, she'd call. During dates, while Fatima was talking, even during meals, Teslimat's voice would come through the speaker, joking, laughing, asking what Akeem was eating, what he was buying. Fatima was never bold enough to confront her. She would sit quietly, her heart boiling, while Akeem brushed it off. "She's just a friend," he would say, "but friends don't dominate another woman's time like that." One evening, they both attended a party. Fatima wanted to unwind. She drank a bit too much, letting loose, laughing with friends and playing games. When Akeem returned from greeting his guys, he saw her slap a male friend playfully during a game. He didn't ask. He didn't listen. He exploded. "You slapped me?" he shouted. "You think that's funny?" Before she could explain, he stormed off and broke up with her on the spot. Fatima was shocked. She begged, she cried, but he was cold. "We're done," he said. "You embarrassed me." Still, they kept talking. They still shared a bed. But now, Akeem insisted, "We're not dating. Don't call it that." One night, in an intimate moment, he moaned out a name, not hers, but Teslimat's. Fatima froze. The anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, it all came rushing at once. She slapped him, not out of rage, but out of heartbreak. The next morning, still shaking, she called Teslimat and warned her to stay away. It led to a terrible fight. The love triangle had turned toxic. And Fatima was the one losing herself in the middle of it. She packed her things and left. But the damage had already been done. Her body began to break down from the emotional toll. Anemia set in, her immune system weakened. She cried constantly. Her heart, already fragile, now felt like it could stop at any moment. She was exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, physically. She had poured so much into people who only took, and now there was barely anything left of her to give. Fatima loved Akeem. She also loved Femi, but neither gave her peace. Now, standing at the edge of herself, she had to ask, what kind of love is worth losing your soul for? Fatima was exhausted, not just in body, but in soul. The days blended into nights, and each morning came with fresh tears, unanswered questions, and a heaviness that no amount of sleep could cure. Her once bright spirit had dimmed under the weight of betrayal, rejection, and confusion. She had walked away from Akeem, or so she thought. But love, especially the kind built on hope and desperation, doesn't vanish that easily. Akeem continued reaching out, sometimes with soft apologies, other times with sharp words masked as jokes. "You'll find someone else," he'd say casually. "Someone who deserves you." But when she'd try to let go, he'd pull her back. He'd show up with gifts, offer a warm hug, or say, "I miss your voice." And just like that, her resolve would crack again. Meanwhile, Femi kept calling. He told her he still cared, said he made a mistake with his new girlfriend, claimed he still saw a future with her, if only she'd give him another chance. Fatima's heart was a battlefield, and both men were fighting for ground they had wounded. She wanted peace, but peace never came. She began to question herself. Was she the problem? Was she too soft, too loyal, too hopeful? Why did she always love more than she was loved? She thought back to all the times she had been enough for others, when she'd cooked, supported, forgiven, and sacrificed. She remembered sleeping on floors, walking under the rain to visit them, and swallowing pain just to keep the peace. And what had she received in return? Half-hearted love. Lies, secrets, replacement. During a quiet evening, She stood by the mirror in her room and barely recognized the girl staring back. Her eyes had lost their shine. Her smile had become mechanical. Her voice, once full of laughter, now only whispered. She didn't feel like a woman in love anymore. She felt like a woman lost in love. Teslimat still called Akeem often, and though he insisted there was nothing going on, Fatima couldn't shake the feeling that she was once again being kept as a placeholder. When she tried to bring it up, Akeem would laugh it off or change the subject. "Don't you trust me?" he'd say, deflect truth with a smile. She wanted to scream, but her silence had become a cage she didn't know how to break. One night, Akeem made a joke. "We'll stop seeing each other soon." He laughed. She didn't. It wasn't funny anymore. It was a pattern, a never-ending cycle of gaslighting, apologies, and promises that led nowhere. As she lay in bed, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, Fatima realized something painful. She was still in love with two men, one who had no plans for her, and one who already replaced her. And in the middle of it all, she was losing herself. But she couldn't do this anymore. She had one episode of her life left to rewrite, and maybe, this time, it would begin with choosing herself. The morning was quiet. For the first time in weeks, Fatima sat alone on the balcony of her hostel, sipping warm tea as the breeze rustled the curtains behind her. There were no calls from Akeem, no texts from Femi, no apologies, no arguments, just silence. And in that silence, peace. She had cried every tear, begged every time, stayed longer than she should have. She had broken and rebuilt herself over and over again for love that only took and never gave back. But this time, something inside her had changed. She was done. Done making excuses for boys who didn't know how to love her. Done shrinking herself for their comfort. Done carrying the blame for their betrayals. For the first time in her life, Fatima saw the pattern, how she kept running back to the same kind of pain, hoping it would heal her differently. And now, she was choosing to break that cycle. She blocked Akeem. Not in anger, but in release. She didn't need another call from him, with sweet lies followed by bitter silence. She didn't need another apology he didn't mean. She didn't need another night pretending she was enough for someone who couldn't even see her. She muted Femi too. Yes, he had been kind once. Yes, he had loved her in his own way. But he made his choice, and he let her go. She had mourned him already. She would not be his comfort zone while he explored other hearts. That night, Fatima journaled. She wrote about everything, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the lessons. She poured every memory onto the page, not to relive them but to let them go. Every line was a farewell to a version of herself that tolerated too much for the sake of being loved. She wrote, "I am not a backup plan. I am not a side option. I am not a phase. I am a whole woman, flawed but worthy, hurt but healing, enough, all on my own." She smiled, and for once the smile wasn't forced. She started therapy the following week. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally ready to be strong the right way. She began attending personal development classes, joined a book club, even picked up a new side hustle. Slowly, she began to fill the empty spaces inside her with things that made her feel alive, not drained. Her grades improved. Her eyes sparkled again. Her laughter returned. Fatima was still healing. Healing is not a one-time decision. It's a process. But she was finally walking the road back to herself. No more begging for love, no more confusion, no more crying over people who couldn't see her worth. If love came again, real love, she would be ready. But next time, it would meet her whole, not broken. This time, Fatima was not waiting to be chosen. She was choosing herself. And that was the beginning of everything.